A Christian who was demoted at work and given a pay cut for expressing his opposition to gay marriage on Facebook has won a High Court action against his employers. Adrian Smith lost his management position at Trafford Housing Trust after posting his beliefs on the social networking site outside of work hours.
Well, joining us now are Mike Judge, the head of communications for the Christian Institute, which paid for Mr. Smith's defence, and from the lesbian, gay and bisexual charity Stonewall, Andy Wassley. And if I could ask you first of all, Mike Judge, I mean, a victory, but what does it mean? Does he get his job back?
Well, that's yet to be decided, and he has won in court. He's overjoyed about that. He had tears in his eyes when the High Court judge stood up and said, Adrian, you've done nothing wrong. He's been two years, it's been a nightmare for him, but he's yet to discover, will Trafford Housing Trust give him his position back?
Interesting, reading a comment from Peter Tatchell, the Peter Tatchell Foundation. He's celebrating this judgment. Are you celebrating?
Well, we think the Trafford Housing Trust, or THT, were very heavy-handed in the way that they went about this. This was somebody temporarily expressing a point of view, and really it does seem inappropriate for somebody to be treated in quite the way he was for that.
I just wonder, Mike Judge, why did Adrian Smith choose to go to the press and the county court with this case rather than going to an industrial tribunal? He would have won a great deal more money. He only won £100 at the end of the day. I just wonder if he feels that this is something that he really wanted to publicise.
No, I think he feels that free speech is really important, and he's been glad to get a lot of public support from that. The reason he didn't go to an employment tribunal is that he didn't have the money at the time, and he didn't come to us until after he was beyond the 3-month time limit. That's why we had to pursue a contract law case through the courts. But he very much feels that this was never really about the money. For him, this was an important point of principle, and he's deeply concerned that if the legal definition of marriage should change, there's going to be a lot more cases like this, and he's not so sure that if the law changes, that other people will win.
Andy, are you concerned at all, though, that the publicity in this case, it might possibly, I don't know, concern people in the workplace? It may make people, think twice before they say things in the workplace?
Well, I think if we look at the social media aspect, we need to be really clear that if somebody has advertised his employment details on Facebook, a lot of employers would say you're never truly speaking in a personal capacity. That doesn't detract from the fact that in this case, I think most people would accept the Housing Trust acted in a very heavy-handed way. But people really do need to accept that, if they're open about who they work for on social media, they need to be careful about what they're saying.
I mean, at root, this comes down to beliefs that people have about gayness or whatever. I mean, what is it acceptable to you? I mean, what criticism is it now acceptable for people to make of gay people if they feel prejudiced against them?
Well, we've always said we're perfectly willing to have a courteous and reasoned debate about issues like equal marriage. We accept not everybody agrees with us. We continue to make our case courteously and strongly. But what we will never accept, and what we will always stand up to, is anybody who vilifies people just because of the way they're born.
I mean, have you inadvertently sort of won a bigot's charter, if you like, with this victory today?
Well, no, I think that the problem has been that, and the reason Adrian has been treated as an outcast is because people do bandy about these terms like bigot, homophobe, just because somebody disagrees. And this issue was about marriage and people's beliefs about marriage. And I'm concerned that the policy being pursued by the Prime Minister and supported by George Osborne and Nick Clegg is creating an atmosphere where people think it is okay to treat people as outcasts if they don't agree. And I think that has to stop, and I think there needs to be a much more moderate debate about this, and I think a lot of ordinary people are worried about who's going to be next, particularly if you work in the public sector. Imagine the law changes on marriage, you work in the public sector, you're a teacher, you'll be forced to endorse this, and if you don't, you'll be an outcast.
Well, I agree with Mike.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you.
Apologies. Thanks very much.